Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading Corporation. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. We are talking today about a lot of the things that have been happening recently in our banking system that to most people, and most people who are involved in our banking system, is quite troubling. We've seen bank failures, we've seen clients' accounts being frozen, but without getting anything further about that away, I'd like to introduce our guest again here, Chris Agelastos, one of our senior account executives here at Swiss America. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you, and thanks for being with us again. Without actually wasting any more time, let's just get right into it. Chris, it seems like literally every day anymore that we're hearing about some kind of a glitch or minor catastrophe taking place with the various banks throughout the country. I think one of the most recent ones that sticks out for a lot of people was the Simi Valley Bank closure several months ago, leaving depositors waiting in line in hopes of being able to get in and gain access to their funds. I don't know about you, but to me, I've got to believe that has to be a horrible feeling when that happens to someone, and their money just is all of a sudden like locked up, or you no longer have access to it. And then
Yeah.
since Simi Valley, it's been happening more and more. Green Dot Bank, which is linked to Walmart, recently restricted depositors' access to their money. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and why this was happening?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things happening here, and what's unique about this story is Green Dot is an online only bank, right? Which a lot of new banks are kind of going that direction. Hey, we don't need branches, but in this case, they had one depositor who had their tax refund over $7,000, I think it was, so a good chunk of money deposited into their bank back in July. And the bank determined that there was some sort of suspicious activity as part of that
Wow.
account, and just locked her out. Froze the account, and she's essentially getting the runaround trying to get her money back. And then you also had technical issues where people couldn't use their funds, transactions were being declined, and essentially the bank had so much of that going on that their call centers were overwhelmed. So I think it kind of comes back to if there isn't a physical branch and you can't get through to them on the phone, you're really at the mercy of the bank. These people are sitting and waiting, using their credit cards to pay their bills because they can't access their funds in a timely manner. And hopefully it gets resolved, but in what time period?
Sure. People are using, because of this, having to use their credit cards to pay bills. That's interesting you bring that up because with the amount of time we look at markets and things that are going on in the economy, I'm sure many of our listeners are aware. Like that's one of the things that is many are calling kind of a huge Achilles heel in our whole financial system right now is the amount of credit card debt out there that is just like choking out families financially. So now you mentioned that
Right.
the gal who was putting, I think it was a gal who was receiving a tax refund, which I would assume
Right.
that was something she filed somewhere back in April, if not earlier of this year. I mean, to your
Yeah.
knowledge, has she received her money yet? I mean, that's quite a few months in waiting.
Yeah, as of yesterday's report, she still had not had access to it. The money was in her account, but she can't use her account. So in essence, she
Wow.
doesn't have the money.
Wow, that is unbelievable. Well,
Yeah.
then, kind of related to that, again, talking about banks and just some of the things we've been seeing or experiencing, or others have over the, really, I think it's been intensified or somewhat magnified the last few years. But I saw over the weekend where thousands of people in various states who bank with Chase, in this case, as an example, they were
Mhm.
unable to access their money through ATMs. Now, from what I understand, it was due to a computer glitch, which we all know that can happen. But as I read this, Chris, I thought to myself, in a way, it's not a big deal. But as I started to think about it more and more, I realized that this is just one more vulnerability being exposed in how our finances work in today's society. And what I mean by that, Simi Valley Bank, situations like Green Dot Bank, or the many other bank closures, at what point does something happen and people panic, creating a mass exodus of banks? And, the
Right.
reason we keep our money in banks is to know that our money is safe and it's there until we need it. I think there's plenty of
Right.
reasons, as we've been discussing things here today, to question that logic. From your perspective, is there a reason for
Mhm.
concern something like this might happen, or do you think it's just over worrying about nothing?
No, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, I would have thought, okay, odds of a complete bank failure, while anything could happen, maybe it's a slim chance. But or you're right. Over the last several years, we've seen multiple glitches, not just with ATMs, but software glitches where people see money disappearing out of their account. In this electronic world where we're so reliant on our computers and systems to be functioning properly, when something goes wrong, it can cause a major problem. And I think a lot of people, until it happens to you, right? You hear the story and you think, oh, well, that stinks, But as this is happening more and more, at some point, we're all going to be affected by it. And what that really does is erode confidence in the banking system. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the banks don't just hold our money there. When you deposit $10,000 into the bank, they no longer just wheel that into the vault and keep it on a shelf with your name on it. That money goes to other people through loans and through credit cards, and the banks invest it. They try to make money on your money, right? That's what they're in the business of.
Sure.
And so they really retain a very small amount of our money in their system. So if you have enough of these seemingly small issues that happen over and over, and people lose confidence, you really only need maybe one out of every 10 people to say, you know what, I don't really trust the bank anymore. I think I'm going to pull my money out. And
Right.
the other 90% might still have confidence in it. But if you get that small percentage that lose faith and pull their money out, that's enough to crash the entire system.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say, as you phrase it, the seemingly small issues. I still remember like it was yesterday, watching those people standing in line at Simi Valley
Yeah,
Bank waiting to get in there, and uh,
yeah.
I bet you if you asked anyone standing in line, is this a seemingly small issue? You'd
No,
probably get a resounding no. This is a big issue, but
yeah,
I
I'd get
understand
a
what you
beat a
mean.
beat down. That's what would happen. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. It's until it happens to you, you can't really appreciate the magnitude of how it can impact your life.
Sure, sure. Well, Chris, one final article I want to talk to you about from a few days ago was something I saw where the U.S. Treasury now has been freezing customers' accounts. Now,
Right.
this we know is common with banks, where an account might be frozen or locked up if they suspect fraud or illegal activity. But there's been a
Hmm.
huge surge recently in frozen bank accounts on tax-paying, law-abiding citizens. In fact, I
Right.
read not too long ago the BBB, Better Business Bureau, that is, has been receiving a record number of complaints recently against banks for these reasons. The common thread in the people who are having their accounts frozen is seemingly nothing. I mean,
Hmm.
in some cases, Chris, they were saying they were retirees. I read about a band that was raising funds for refugee relief, um,
Hmm.
or like the article we talked about a moment ago, or excuse me, an article on the I think it's coming on the screen now, where a woman just simply deposited a $1,500 check she received in a settlement. And
Right.
it seems like the banks have grown increasingly less concerned about the people that they should be serving, and very arbitrary in their actions.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, Chris, what do you think the end game is here, or is there one? I know it's a question, a matter of your opinion, but I mean, what do you
Yeah.
think is going on here?
Well, it's a good question. With this particular case with the U.S. Treasury, is there malice there, or quite honestly, since it's the government, maybe it's simply incompetence, right? We know they aren't always the most efficient when it comes to managing things, but some of the major complaints here, was again people being frozen out of their accounts. This one gentleman has had accounts with Treasury Direct for over 10 years, buying I bonds, a safe investment, right, in U.S. bonds. And all of a sudden, the Treasury Department decided to go back and start auditing all these old accounts. Is it to drum up money? Is it to find errors? Who knows? But they're going back years and essentially um, having people be guilty freezing them in their account, and then you have to prove your innocence. The opposite of our justice system here, and that's the real problem to me. Is there's all this unchecked power, and if they have your money and they deem anything suspicious or they have a question about something, they can lock you out of your funds. And until or unless you can prove yourself innocent, you're really at the mercy of the banks or at the government in this case. And how do you fight the government? How does one person, right? You're not going to go down to DC and knock on the Treasury Department door and go to see somebody about this issue. In fact, they didn't even have phone access to people to be able to get help. They had to correspond through the mail. So you have to send in complaints, send in proof verifying that you're an innocent person, not a criminal. And I mean, that can take weeks or even months to resolve. And what do you do in the meantime?
Sure, sure. And in fact, I think I read that where one gentleman repeated the one gentleman I think with the I bonds repeatedly
Hmm.
was requesting some clarification or what have you,
Right.
and nothing happened. So
That's
Chris,
it.
this all ties into the report Swiss America has been offering people about the secret war on their cash. And
Hmm.
anyone listening to this podcast here today or watching it can get their free copy by calling, the Swiss America offices at 1-800-289-2646 or going to the website, swissamerica.com. And Chris, if you don't mind, as we wrap up here, could you tell our listeners a little more about what they could expect to see when they request a copy of this report?
Yeah, so this is, if not the most, certainly one of the most popular reports we've put out because it highlights a lot of the things that we talked about today. The freedoms that really we've lost in our banking system and the risks we take when we put our money in. And the bank obviously isn't going to put on the front of one of their brochures when you're opening an account, all the risks that you're agreeing to and the risks that you're taking. They want to make everything sound rosy and give you confidence, but it's when you have these problems that you realize, maybe I should have read the fine print. And so, really, this report puts some of that information in a concise, easy to read format, so you can be better informed. I mean, I think, look, we all probably have to use the banking system at the very least to some extent, but I think you should be armed with the knowledge and understand the risks so that maybe you can better diversify yourself or give yourself a fighting chance against
Sure.
these big banks and the government.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for today, Chris, again, for being with us on this podcast. And for those of you tuning in, we really appreciate it as well. Again, my name is Dean Heskin. I'm president and CEO of Swiss America Trading. Thanks for tuning in and look forward to the next time you do. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.